HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents A Monk in the World, Cultivating a Spiritual Life, by Wayne Teasdale. Foreword by Ken Wilber. Read by James Anderson Foster. Foreword. This is a beautiful, wonderful, wise book that gently touches and compassionately evokes the deep spirituality in all of us. But more than that, it further invites us, challenges us, to carry that awakened spirituality into the world, thus integrating inner life with outer life, drenching both in a radiance from the realized heart that allows grace the room to do its divine work. A more balanced, more complete, more integral spirituality, uniting both inner and outer, is the theme of this moving book. It seems that humankind's spiritual aspirations have often fallen into two major camps, what we might call this-worldly and otherworldly, or earth-oriented and heaven-oriented. The latter portrays salvation as existing in a dimension or realm that is somehow apart from this world, not of this earth, profoundly beyond this plane of existence. Whether this is a mythical heaven beyond earth, or a nirvana divorced from samsara, or a contemplative ascent that leaves the senses far behind, we find in these traditions a concerted proclamation that this world is, at best, a prep school for the divine, and, at worst, an active source of evil, sin, duality, and despair, the escape from which is a prerequisite for salvation. This worldly traditions, on the other hand, are headed in more or less the opposite direction. All true liberation and salvation must be found on this earth, in this body, in this life. Any aspirations for a transcendental heaven are not only based on childhood illusions, but actively deny and repress present human potentials that alone can lead to a bettering of life for millions of human beings. This worldly traditions include a wide variety of approaches, from classic paganism to modern Marxism to scientific materialism to virtually all ecology movements. But what they all have in common is the belief that transcendental religions are not only the opiate of the masses, they devastate effective action in the only arena that actually matters: this earth, this world, right here and now. Is my ultimate salvation to be found in this world or out of it? It seems that the first step to a more integral or comprehensive approach to spirituality would be discovering a way to truly bring together the important truths of both this worldly compassion and otherworldly realization, thus uniting the immanent and transcendent aspects of a spirituality that charitably embraces both. But that challenge, daunting enough in itself, is only the first in a series of difficult but incredibly exciting opportunities for discovering a spirituality that is at home in both this world and the other, a heaven that transcends and includes the earth and all its blessed inhabitants, a spirituality that does not cloister its realization but ecstatically shares it with the world, a nirvana not divorced from samsara but embracing samsara in the radiance of its own self-realization. It appears that a truly integral spirituality, the spirituality of a monk in the world, of a contemplative heaven embracing this earth, would have to integrate or include a vast range of truths from across the entire spectrum of human possibilities, including not only this worldly and otherworldly spirituality, but also the undeniable truths of modern science. In short, a truly Catholic spirituality, as a matrix of manifestation, would have to include the very best of pre-modern, modern, and postmodern truths, bound together by a spirit that transcends all and includes all, that goes beyond but intimately embraces this and all possible worlds. A tall order, yes? But what is so exhilarating about this quest is that many spiritual adepts and practitioners from around the world are rapidly converging on the outlines of what a truly integral spirituality might look like. This truly Catholic spirituality does not deny the revealed truths of any tradition, but gently sets them in the context of each other's realizations, fostering an interspirituality that deepens, not denies, the truths of each. I have suggested one such approach in A Brief History of Everything, but the important point is that these approaches are beginning rapidly to emerge around the world, and Brother Wayne, in the following pages, will introduce you to some of the truly great pioneers in this move toward a more integral spirituality, toward a more Catholic communion of all souls in the radiance of being, the radiance of a timeless otherworldly spirit that finds its own body and its own substance and its own realization in the glories of this world, in the pulsing of this earth, in the beating of the hearts of all sentient beings, moved by grace and found by a glory that reminds us all that the temporal and historical are simply the ecstatic self-expressions of the timeless and eternal. Brother Wayne dedicates this book to Father Thomas Keating, whom he calls my spiritual father, brother, and friend, and who, I deeply concur, will be judged by history to be one of the great founding saints of a more integral and Catholic spirituality. Brother Wayne discusses several others who I also agree are among the founding souls of this more charitable embrace: Thomas Merton, Abhishektananda, the Dalai Lama, Bede Griffiths, Raimon Panikkar, Brother David Stendhal-Rast, Amma, Thich Nhat Hanh, and Rabbi Zalman Schachter. And he certainly would not exclude the great historical forerunners of such, from Plotinus to Lady Tsojal to the remarkable Sri Aurobindo. While the timeless truths of spirit are surely just that, namely, timeless, it appears that the temporal truths of spirit ceaselessly unfold, with new truths emerging daily, new revelations constantly accumulating, screaming surprises jumping out at us from every corner of spirit's astonishing creativity, as evolution itself searches secretly through the stream of time that is spirit's great unfolding sport and play. And it does appear, or so it seems to this poor soul, that today's world, today's modern and postmodern world, is slowly groping its way, guided by the cunning of grace, to find forms of spirituality more intimately suited to the times, which is to say, suited to spirit's unfolding in this historical arc of its own manifestation. And it does likewise appear that truly Catholic souls such as Brother Wayne will join the ranks of those who are compassionately acting as spirit's contemplative witness to a yet more encompassing, more compassionate, more glorious embrace, so that each and every sentient being may truly become a monk in this world. Ken Wilber, Spring, 2002. Introduction. Living as a Monk in the World. It has been said that sometimes we have to go halfway across the world to discover what lies right under our noses, and sometimes what we discover and the consequences these discoveries generate become a defining moment for us. My defining moment came in India. What I experienced there has become the foundation of my identity. In 1986, I accepted an invitation to visit Father Bede Griffiths, an English Benedictine monk who had been living in India and studying Hinduism for many years. He invited me to stay with him for a time at Shantivanam, or Peaceful Grove, a Christian ashram established in 1950 by two Frenchmen, Jules Monchanin and Henri Le Sceau, who later became known as Abhishektananda. Father Bede, who took over the ashram in 1968, was invited to India by a friend to establish a Benedictine monastery on the subcontinent. In 1968, he was asked to assume leadership of Shantivanam when Abhishektananda left to meditate in a cave in the north of India. Shantivanam is in the village of Tanirpalli, in the southern state of Tamil Nadu, some 280 miles southwest of Madras. It sits on 50 acres on the banks of the Kaveri, one of India's 7 sacred rivers, often called the Ganges of the South. For millennia, the land around Shantivanam has been held as sacred, a consecrated place for sages, sannyasis or monks, and mystics. More recently, it has become a refuge and sanctuary for countless pilgrims of many different traditions. It is a tiny patch of paradise in the midst of India's poverty, disease, and overpopulation, serious problems of a struggling democracy. Rich in mangoes and rice, Shantivanam possesses a beauty, serenity, and peace that welcome the many weary pilgrims who come to it for sanctuary. Once travelers find it, they quickly fall under its spell and don't want to leave. Into this secluded forest I arrived in early November 1986, already a lay monk from 100 Acres Monastery, a small religious community in New Hampshire. I first stayed for 6 months. I then returned for another 6 months each of the following 2 years. On my third visit, with the new year approaching, Father Bede sent for me and asked if I would consider taking sannyasa, or Indian monkhood, from him as a Christian, not as a Hindu. I hadn't considered this step when I planned this third trip, but to my utter surprise I found myself agreeing before I even had a chance to think about it. I felt a strange peace about his invitation and my decision, even though I wasn't sure I was ready to take such a momentous step. Several days later, 25 of us assembled on the banks of the river an hour before dawn to share in the sannyasa diksha, the ceremony of initiation that goes back to the Vedas and the Upanishads, the sacred Hindu texts. We sat in meditation under a grove of eucalyptus trees as we prepared. The river was quiet and still, but nature was awake with life, and across the Kaveri an eerie chanting emanated from a Hindu temple, a timeless harbinger of the coming day. Although it was cloudy that early morning, an energy moved through the air. The atmosphere seemed charged with countless presences, angelic beings who had come to witness what was about to happen. In India, a diksha is a timeless event woven into the fabric of the country's religious history and culture, a sacred occurrence in a spiritual society. The gentle and sagely Father Bede signaled to a young monk who led us in the Gayatri mantra, the most sacred chant of the Indian tradition, found in the Rig Veda, one of the most ancient in the tradition. This was followed by more chants, and then readings from the Upanishads, the Psalms, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Gospel of John. Bede then gave a beautiful discourse on the meaning of sannyasa, the ancient roots of renunciation in the life of the rishis, the saints, sages, and mystics of Indian antiquity. He described the place of the renunciate in India and in the Church, how the sannyasi is a living sign of the transcendent nature of life, of the mystical quest for God, or, in Indian terms, the quest for the Absolute. Father Bede and I approached the edge of the sacred Kaveri. I entered the water and took off my clothes, flinging them into the surface stream, then submerging myself under the water 3 times. As sunrise quickly approached and I emerged from the river, Father Bede wrapped me in the kavi, the ancient religious garb of the renunciate, the sannyasi. This rite of initiation is thousands of years old, and it symbolizes renunciation of the world, of possessions, and of oneself. Quickly I dried myself off, hidden by the morning's pale radiance. Grinning broadly, Father Bede draped me with the kavi. Traditionally, the kavi consists of 2 pieces of cloth the color of saffron. One piece is a dhoti, worn around the waist and reaching the feet, while the other is worn around the shoulders as a shawl. The garment itself is simple and elegant, part of the national dress of India that men, women, and children all wear. My kavi was saffron, the color of purity, representing the sannyasi's goal of freedom from desire. The diksha was a very powerful experience for me. It left an indelible mark on my spiritual life and became a prominent feature in my interior geography. After I took this radical step of sannyasa, the life of renunciation, I thought to myself, perhaps I should make a home here and stay in India, living right here at Shantivanam. I had fallen under the spell of Shantivanam and the new life that lay before me. But it was not to be. Hours later, as I sat with Bede on the porch of his hut, he turned to me and with gentle authority said, "Your mission is in the West." I replied that I was thinking I might like to stay at Shantivanam, but he insisted that I return home. "You are needed in America, not here in India." He went on to describe how the sannyasi's life might look in America or Europe. The real challenge for you, Wayne, is to be a monk in the world, a sannyasi who lives in the midst of society at the very heart of things. Although this charge seemed difficult, I accepted it, only later perceiving the wisdom in it. A sannyasi always receives a new name, and so Father Bede gave me the Sanskrit name Paramatmananda, which means bliss of the Supreme Spirit, or joy of the Holy Spirit. I strove to make the name fit me, finding joy and humor in life and sharing them with others. From Withdrawal to Engagement. The way of a sannyasi, or sannyasini, nun in India, is an acosmic path, that is, not of this world. It transcends the values, attachments, and obligations of worldly existence. As in their Christian and Buddhist counterparts, the way of the sannyasi and sannyasinin is a path of withdrawal, a radical extraction from the ways of selfish, purely individualistic pursuits. This withdrawal makes possible a focus on the eternal, changeless reality of the ultimate. The way of the sannyasi concentrates one's life and energy on this eternal quest and the difficult work of transformation, a lonely, often desolating activity. The most dramatic and ancient characterization of the acosmic ascetic, the Muni or silent seer, is found in the Rig Veda, where this seer is said to be girded with the wind. This description emphasizes just how unrelated to this world the renunciate is, underscoring the total freedom and detachment of the otherworldly ascetic. The renunciate's commitment is absolute and final, like that of the Buddha 2,000 years later, or of Christians Francis of Assisi in the 13th century and Benedict of Nursia in the 5th. This otherworldly orientation is found throughout the Christian monastic and contemplative tradition and serves as the basis of the Carmelite order and the influential teachings of the Spanish mystics of the 16th century, Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross, as also of the English mystic Julian of Norwich. For the less contemplative, more active orders of the Church, a way of formulating this calling is in the world, but not of the world. Without doubt, there is great value in spirituality that emphasizes and supports withdrawal from society, but in our time, with its special needs, we require a spirituality of intense involvement and radical engagement with the world. It is in the real world that people live their busy lives, and it is in the real world that the wisdom of the monks must be made accessible. It is in the real world that their awakening and development need to occur, not off in remote solitude. The type of engagement I have in mind is direct, not abstract. It is a twofold engagement: personal encounter with others and a participation in the experiences, struggles, trials, joys, triumphs, and fears most people in society experience. The daily tasks of earning a living, paying bills, saving money, getting along with others, being entertained, enjoying healthy recreation, and learning how to interact with difficult people are all part of an active life. So they must also be part of life for a monk in the world, at the crossroads of contemporary culture and experience. When I use the term monk in the world, I am referring both to my own situation as a monastic type living in the heart of society, and to you, who are or aspire to be a contemplative resident in the same busy world. The traditional monastic understanding that one can be in the world but not of it can be reformulated as engaged in the world but free of it. Engaged in the world and with others, but not attached to the world's greed, indifference, insensitivity, noise, confusion, pettiness, unease, tension, and irreverence. Declaring oneself a monk or mystic in the world is a way to make the journey easier. By committing to a way of life, or even simply to a name on which we can hang our attention, we formalize our commitment to treating our actions in the world as important. Many organized religions have realized the necessity of creating institutional positions for those following the practice of their faith. Although we might not all want the structure and tradition of an established path, the formal dedication to becoming a mystic in the world, even if we keep the identification to ourselves, can help us immeasurably as we battle with the endless distractions the world serves up to us. Whether this commitment involves taking the lay monk's full vows of celibacy and the formal practice, as I have done, or simply following a path of spiritual practice and right behavior, a formal commitment, one we can return to in our moments of doubt and distraction, makes a mature spiritual life possible. The monastery within. Monks and nuns live set apart in a consecrated place. Their monastery exists for 3 reasons: to provide a supportive environment to seek God in a spirit of daily surrender, to provide an ongoing opportunity for genuine Christian or Buddhist, Hindu, or Jain love in the practice of acceptance of one another, a place to pursue compassion and selfless love toward each other, and to provide a refuge for people living active lives, those caught up in the distractions of this noisy, confusing, and disordered world. In this last sense, it is a sanctuary for all who arrive at the monastery's gate, a place of peace and calm where the ways of the world do not follow. The visitors who stay for a time in the monastic retreat or guest house come for many reasons. Some are in search of God and of themselves in God. Perhaps they want the simplicity and focus of the monastery, the sane and balanced rhythm of prayer, work, and study. Perhaps they desire the integrated life of a single place rather than the fragmented existence of contemporary life. It may be the sacred values and practices of monasticism, or the emphasis on the sacredness of life, nature, cosmos, and one another that draws them. Often, it is the deep seriousness and commitment to faith and to transcendent reality that calls them for a brief time to come apart and be renewed in spirit by drinking from the living waters of divine wisdom. Sometimes it is to experience a sacred, timeless culture, one that is less mired in the compulsiveness and insensitivity of modern society. Whatever the reason, for the vast majority who come to these peaceful oases, it is for a very brief time, a weekend, a few days, or a week. For these seekers, the question becomes how to integrate their glimpse of monastic peace into their everyday lives in the world, how to cultivate contemplation within an active life. To achieve this integration requires the realization that the real monastery exists within them as a dimension of their own consciousness. The important work for all of us in the world is the inner struggle and refinement that goes on in the midst of our daily activities. How do we succeed in dwelling in the cave of our own hearts, in that monastery within? How do we nurture and nourish, inspire and inform the inner monk that all of us have and are as an expression of the mystic in us? That is the focus and concern of this book. The outer and inner monk. Although custom and usage has identified it with male monastics exclusively, the word monk is actually a generic term referring to both male and female monastics. Jean Leclerc, 1911-1993, the French Benedictine monastic, theologian, and historian, used to remark that we need a new word that unites the word for monk and nun. With tongue-in-cheek, he brought the two together and proposed nunc. The word nun actually refers to female monastics, though it is extended in ordinary usage to any woman religious in vows. Usually, a nun is a religious sister who lives under a monastic rule in an enclosed environment, a cloister. A monk, then, is a person who has dedicated his or her life to seeking God. St. Benedict, in his rule, elevates this activity to the highest level of motivation and proclaims it the definitive criterion for accepting a candidate into the monastery. Brother David Stendal-Rost, an Austrian-born Benedictine monk and one of the leaders of the American interfaith encounter of the last 30 years, once remarked, "If the first thing you think of in the morning when you wake up is God, then you are a monk." The outer monk, that is, the monk in the regular sense, belongs to a monastery under a rule of life and an abbot or superior. This monk wears the habit or religious garb and takes vows. Being an outer monk following the traditional monastic community life often makes possible the inner monk, the mystic within. Monasticism in all its forms, Eastern, Western, primitive, inventive, contemplative, active, and mixed, exists to nurture the development, fruition, and gifts of the inner mystic or inner monk. We all have this hidden mystic consciousness that desires to be born, grow, and give itself out freely. The contemplative journeys to this goal on which he or she has his heart and mind concentrated in all effort. The contemplative seeks intimacy with the Spirit, with infinite consciousness, vast realization, with God, the hidden divine mystery. The word mystic refers to this desire and pursuit of intimacy with the divine, with the Spirit, for the sake of others and for oneself. Contemplation is essentially the process of acquiring this intimacy, and monasteries are places of cultivating this capacity and gift. Capacity meaning our own effort, and gift meaning God's infusion of grace into our inner being. Contemplation is the ultimate purpose of monastic communities. They are environments of intense and comprehensive growth in this most precious of activities. The essence of monastic life is not its structures, but its interior practice, and the heart of interior practice is contemplative prayer, wrote Thomas Keating, the Trappist spiritual teacher. The monk is immersed in contemplative experience, and this is why he or she chooses such a unique way of life. The monastery is not an end in itself, or that place where everything comes together for us, but a means to cultivate the mystic in us, the contemplative vision and gift. Each person has this gift, or at least access to it, simply by being born. Our birth is an invitation to our gifts, a call to immersion in the Absolute, with the possibility of our ultimate transformation through contact with the divine. All monastic life must be inspired by this deep desire. Monasticism has its origin here in the hidden places of the heart. Brother David Steindl-Rast expresses it simply, "Monasticism of the heart is the heart of monasticism." It is this heartfelt monasticism that has inspired so many souls to venture to mountain caves, desert huts, and remote communities throughout the East and West, whether these seekers be Hindu, Jain, Buddhist, or Christian. It is the longing of the monk within that calls so many to leave the world for brief retreats. The same call works within both the outer and the inner monk. The outer monk joins the monastery to release the inner monk's mystical life. A monastic is ideally someone who takes the inner monk seriously, and this inner monk is simply the mystic in all of us. Eventually, the outer and inner monk become one through prayer, spiritual practice, meditation, or mystical contemplation. All these practices are related to the birth of awareness and to inner attention to the sacred. The monk in all of us, as cross-cultural thinker Raimon Panikar observes, aspires to reach the ultimate goal of life with all his or her being by renouncing all that is not necessary to it, that is, by concentrating on this one single and unique goal. Panikar speaks of the inner monk as essential to the human, as part of each person. Having an inner monk doesn't require an overtly religious context. It is an innate expression of the mystical quest that everyone can reach by virtue of our common humanity. The monastic vocation as such precedes the fact of being Christian, or Buddhist, or secular, or Hindu, or even atheist, writes Panikar. Why be a monk in the world? Is it possible for the masses of humanity who do not live in monastic seclusion to activate the monk within? Are we capable of realizing the mystical life here in the world, in the midst of so much frantic activity? That question is the basic preoccupation of this book. Why be a monk in the world and not in a comfortable monastery? For many years I assumed I would find God sequestered away, and surely one can, but I learned a valuable lesson from my time in India. India taught me the primacy of the mystical quest, the search for the divine presence by the wandering ascetic renunciate. India incorporated this vital dimension of spiritual life early on in its history. It required that the contemplative life, the monk within, be appointed to the last stage in life, but for everyone, not just for a select few. This was and remains the ideal. Although monasteries and other such institutions are useful, They are not necessary for one to make his or her way into this mystery. Once the
Sample complete. Ready to continue?